My name is Mina Gunte. I'm the chair of the Housing Committee, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone, and that's it. Welcome. Tonight, we're going to start off with a presentation by Jordan from DCP. Next month, we're actually going to have a housing-specific forum, but today, we'd like to just touch on a few things that will be. It's a combination of housing and land use, but mostly land use. And the reason why we're doing it here is because, first of all, I'm new to the committee and I want to know what we need to know on the land use side. Before.
I'm sorry, Chair, just for clerical purposes, it's my understanding that says zoning and land use training, but this is not a zoning and land use training meeting, is that correct?
Correct.
What is this?
This is a presentation on zoning and land use, which is going to touch a little bit on housing to get us more familiar with what we need to, the questions that we need to be asking in connection with housing.
And just one other thing, I'm a little confused about why they didn't come to the land use committee, because DCP is a land use agency. And why they have the housing and not.
Because we were originally gonna have a housing only presentation, but the housing only presentation, the information and the questions that Dante and I were asking, it would be better for us to do it all in just one evening with just housing. And we wouldn't be able to do that this evening. So we'd like to get started.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Just so we can get started, because the agenda doesn't look as full as it does, but I do have some other things that I'd like to bring up in new business. And Jordan, you have the floor.
All right, thanks. Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. Thank you again for inviting us here tonight and next month. We're really excited to be here.
So they're coming back next
Yes,
month as well?
with housing
for the
specific.
housing?
Yes.
I didn't know you guys were involved in housing. What happened to HPD?
That's why
We work with them, yeah.
Get focus on your housing experts.
My name is Jordan Fraud. I am the Department of City Planning Liaison for Community Districts 8 and 9. And I'm joined by my colleague Jonah Rogoff, who is a team leader in the Brooklyn office. This is a zoning and land use, basically it's a zoning and land use 101 presentation. We give it to community boards all around the city. And as, I'm sorry, it's Mina? Mina. As Mina said, we have been talking to the Housing Committee for a little while, talking about coming out here and finding ways for us to work together more closely on helping to achieve your vision for the neighborhood. And next month, we're going to come with a presentation that's a little bit more specific about the status quo of housing here in the district and the data that we have about it. But because we have never come to this committee before, we wanted to start with our zoning and land use 101 presentation just to give more of a sense of who we are and what we do and what our role is in the broader city infrastructure. So this is what we're going to talk about. An introduction to our department, who we are and what we do, an overview of how zoning works and why it exists, and the types of land use applications that we work with. We will review the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, which really is the thing that we as an agency our biggest responsibility is facilitating the ULURP process. And then we'll talk a little bit about how we can provide support to you all in the coming year to help achieve your goals for the neighborhood. So who we are. We are the Department of City Planning. We are a mayoral agency, or an executive agency, which means that the mayor appoints the head of the department. And this is just some of the stakeholders that we work with. We work with other city agencies like HPD and DOT. We work with community boards and the mayor's office and the city council and borough presidents and their boards. And we work especially closely with the City Planning Commission. Our key mission, as mandated by the city charter, is to maintain the formal public review process for land use changes, which is ULURP. We'll talk about that in more detail in a little bit. And in particular, that means reviewing individual land use applications and conducting environmental reviews for proposed zoning changes. our goal is to make sure that everything comes through that process in a timely and objective fashion. We work very closely with the City Planning Commission, also known as the CPC, but there are some differences and we are separate. We are an agency made up of civil servants, planners, urban designers, and researchers. We conduct neighborhood studies and do community planning. We administer the city's land use review process, known as ULURP, and we support and advise the CPC on policy and planning issues. We are not a decision-making agency. The City Planning Commission is the decision-making entity. It has 13 appointed commissioners appointed by the mayor and the borough presidents and the public advocate. And their job is to review and vote on land use actions as part of ULURP. All of their meetings are public and live streamed. Everything from rezonings to business improvement district formations to citywide text amendments go through the CPC. And their job is to balance citywide goals with neighborhood visions. Our goal as an agency, broadly speaking, is to make New York City a better place to live, maintain what works, and improve what doesn't for all New Yorkers. We work with neighborhoods and other government agencies to develop strong foundational frameworks for growth that align citywide objectives with individual community needs. The overarching principles that inform our work, you can see some of them here. Long-term neighborhood improvement, housing affordability, economic development and job growth, resiliency and sustainability, and social and economic equity.
The one thing though, I noticed that isn't showing the whole thing. People wanna watch it later, so if we could move it over a little bit.
Yeah, cause you
You
can't
see,
see
it's
That
all.
monitor up there.
It's only the, oops.
Yeah, it's only getting the blue, the orange, and the yellow, the green. It's not getting
Sure,
orange.
yeah.
Be careful, the computer's attached.
Yeah,
Wait,
let's,
maybe we should,
Yeah, you could just move it over a little bit more, Tara.
What do you wanna have them? You wanna get,
Okay.
that
There you
You'll
go.
be
there we
able
go.
to watch at home,
Yeah.
just a little bit.
thank you.
We'll also share this PowerPoint with all of you.
But then you never see it, it doesn't ever connect, you know, on the YouTube.
Each borough has a DCP satellite office. So we're from the Brooklyn office. We work at 16 Court Street in downtown Brooklyn. And then our central divisions are located in Lower Manhattan. And those are the three bars here on the right. They provide us with support in strategic planning, technical planning, and planning support. So that's everything from our data management and IT to technical review of applications where they really go into the details of site plans and drawings and things like that and make sure that they align with our standards, environmental review, research on housing, economics, and infrastructure, waterfront and open space, urban design, things like that. So we have a variety of areas of expertise. We're going to go now into zoning and the types of land use applications that we cover. The overall goal of zoning is to control the built environment for the public good. New York City's first zoning resolution was established in 1916, and it focused on light and air, separation of uses, and nuisances. Things like, do new buildings have windows and ventilation shafts? Can we make sure that slaughterhouses are not being opened next to, places where people currently live? Very sort of rudimentary health and safety and quality of life concerns. And over time it has grown to become much more complex. We try to ensure cohesiveness among all of the different users of the city. We try to provide predictability for new development and make sure that there's a framework for appropriate growth. So zoning basically controls what can be built on a property and how much of it can be built. It has to align with a thought-out plan to make sure that it doesn't infringe too much on private property rights. It gives developers and residents a clear idea of what can be built. So think of it as a guide for growth. It's also worth thinking a little bit about what zoning cannot do. It cannot force development to occur if the local conditions aren't right for it. It can't require private owners to include specific uses or tenants. So zoning can't say, you can only build this if you include a restaurant or a daycare or an axe throwing bar on the ground floor, right? It can't mandate anything like that. It generally cannot say like you can only build this if it's all 2-bedroom apartments or 3-bedroom apartments, right? It's generally pretty agnostic about unit size. It also can't require existing buildings to be torn down, right? If a building is already up and then the zoning is changed and all of a sudden the building doesn't comply with the zoning anymore, that doesn't mean the building has to be torn down.
But the zoning can be restrictive, so that only certain types of development can happen on a particular site.
Yes,
So I think you need to.
it controls what can be built, not necessarily what will be built. And it also doesn't directly finance the construction of new housing, right? Again, it's about what can be built, not necessarily what will be built. The biggest sort of tool or concept that we use to govern what can be built on a lot and how much of it is called floor area ratio, or FAR. And it compares the total floor area of a building to the size of a lot. So floor area ratio is a number, right? It's 2 or 3 or 4 or 1.5. And what you see here are all examples of a 2 FAR building, right? So option A means that a 2 FAR building is a 2-story building that takes up the entire lot, right? That's 2 FAR. The next thing you see, option B, is a 4-story building that takes up half of the lot, right? And then option C is an 8-story building that takes up a quarter of the lot. All of these buildings have the same amount of floor area. The buildings are just configured on the lot in different ways. But what FAR basically tells you is how much building you can build. We govern height separately, right? So like if in a certain zoning district you can't build higher than 8 stories, that's different from regulating floor area. Floor area is just about how much building can you build, how much floor can you build.
So how much floor space, basically?
Yes,
sake,
exactly.
Not air rights or anything.
Exactly. How much floor space can you build? Zoning districts are also really important to understand. Every parcel in the city has a zoning district assigned to it. And there are generally 3 types of districts. There's residential, commercial, and manufacturing. So we have these codes that regulate the type of intensity, the type or intensity of development allowed in an area. R is for residential, which means generally that you can only build residential. C is for commercial, and generally in commercial districts you can build commercial or residential, although there are some exceptions to that. There are commercial districts where no residential is allowed. And then M generally is manufacturing, and that allows manufacturing or commercial uses. And the number that you see tends to denote the intensity of how much you can build, right? So in an R1 district, that is the most restrictive residential district. You can basically only build single-family homes. And as the number goes up, we go up to 10 or 11 here. That means you can build more and more in terms of height and floor area on the lot. So that's generally how our zoning districts work. And then in addition to that, on the bottom you see our use groups. Different zoning districts have different allowances for what types of uses can be included on the property. So the zoning district combines the amount you can build and the amount you can build, the bulk and the height and the density, and also what type of use. Some more examples. R6A is a pretty common zoning district in central Brooklyn. It has a maximum FAR of 3.9, and what you see here are some examples of buildings, the kind of buildings that you might get in an R6A zoning district. And then on the right, M14 is a pretty standard manufacturing zoning district. It has an FAR of 2.0, and you see here the type of building that you might get in an M14 district. Enforcement. DCP is not an enforcement agency. We cannot enforce or levy penalties for non-compliance with zoning. We provide technical assistance and we develop changes. But if there is a zoning or housing violation, the agency that is responsible for enforcing that is the Department of Buildings. They interpret and enforce the zoning regulations on the books. There is one exception, which is something called a variance, which is basically if a property owner feels that they have some sort of unusual hardship because of their property and they would like an exception to the zoning, a body called the Board of Standards and Appeals has the power to review and grant variances. But generally, the way it works is that planning makes the rules and buildings enforces them. There are a variety of types of land use applications that come across our desk. The big ones include zoning map amendments, which is what most people would think is a rezoning, right? Someone basically says, currently the zoning only allows me to build 2 stories of commercial. I would like to build a 10-story mixed-use residential and commercial. You know, can I change the zoning to allow that to happen? That's called a zoning map amendment, sort of the rezoning of a property. Special permits are things that we issue for unusually complicated development proposals where we want to have more control over what can be built. We have something called an urban development action area program, which is, for example, if there's like city-owned land that we want to work with a public agency or developer to develop in a certain way. We have a special process for evaluating proposals on city-owned or state-owned land. So we cover a variety of different types of land use applications. There are also things on the bottom like authorizations, landmark transfers, and acquisition of office space that are under the control of the city planning department but don't go through a full ULURP process. The other thing to keep in mind is that land use actions can be initiated by public or private individuals. So a public land use application could be something like, many of you might have heard of the Atlantic Avenue Mixed Use Plan, which was adopted in, I think, March or possibly, no, I think May of last year. That was a public land use application, right? That was the city, you know, the planning department and a couple of other city departments basically coming forward and saying, you know, we have worked with the residents of this neighborhood and the local council members, and we would like to change the zoning for this corridor along Atlantic Avenue in these ways, right? You know, a unified vision for a neighborhood. That's a publicly initiated land use application. Private, the vast majority of the applications that we work with are private land use applications, and they are initiated by private developers for specific development proposals. So Herkimer Williams here, which is an affordable housing development at the Broadway Junction Station, privately initiated. 7399 Empire Boulevard, which was the last major land use change to be certified or approved in this community district. Again, also a private land use application. Both of these go through ULURP. So what is ULURP? To get into ULURP, it probably is worth thinking about what happens to the 80 to 90%, like 80 or 90% of all new housing production in New York City never goes through ULURP and never crosses our desk, right? This is what's called as-of-right development. What it means is that it follows all of the rules in the current zoning. So if you are a developer, you go to the Department of Buildings, you show them your drawings indicating that the thing that you want to build is allowed by the current zoning rules, they stamp your papers, they give you your permit, and you go and build, right? When we get involved is when something is not permitted as of right, and a developer or member of the public or whoever wants to come to us and get some sort of discretionary approval. It means that the development does not meet the zoning rules, and so it will generally need to get approval through the ULURP process. As of November, when a bunch of charter amendments were passed, there have been some changes to the ULURP process, which we can get into a little bit more next month if people have questions about it. So this slide, some changes have taken place and we haven't updated the graphic yet, but this is generally the way it works, right?
What is missing is the pre-ULURP process.
The
We
what?
don't have anything there about the pre-ULURP process, the environmental review process.
We're about to get to that.
And how long it takes.
Yep, we're about to
and
get
all the
there.
deals are done.
Yep, I'm about to get to that.
Before it gets to the community, okay.
So ULURP is basically the end, in many ways ULURP is the end of the process for us.
Thank you.
Right, yeah, we work with community boards and borough presidents and city council and the mayor's office. And the way that ULURP works in particular that makes it unique is there's a shot clock, right? Every decision-making body in the ULURP process has a set amount of time to make a decision, right? And at the end of their period, they have to make a decision, and then it moves on to the next person. So before we even begin the public review process, DCP takes land use applications in, we evaluate and review them, and we prepare them to enter public review. And that's a process called pre-certification. We review the application, we receive the environmental review paperwork from the applicant, and they pay their fees and submit their application, and then when it's ready to enter public review, it's certified. When DCP certifies an application, that does not mean that we are endorsing it or like taking a position on it in any way. All it means is that we feel that the application materials are complete and it is ready to enter public review. So that's how it begins. The first decision maker in the ULURP process is the community board.
Excuse me, not a decision maker, let's be very clear, they're advisory only, so please, aware of your language.
Okay. The community board reviews the application and holds a public hearing, and they issue a recommendation. Ms. Boyd is right that recommendation is advisory and not binding, and the community board has 60 days for that,
60 days from when?
from when the application is certified.
No, there's a 1 month period before that. You have to give notice.
Are you right? Okay,
30
yes.
days.
So we do something called a pre-certification notice, which generally happens around 30 days before we expect an application will certify. Although, like certifications don't, the timeline for certification is not always the most predictable. We try to issue a notice about 30 days before when we think something is likely to certify. But all that does is alert the board that this is coming. It doesn't actually begin any sort of official decision-making process. The 60 days that the community board has begins from when the certification occurs at the City Planning Commission, right? That begins the community board's 60-day clock to review and hold a hearing and issue a recommendation.
One question.
Mm-hmm.
The community board doesn't meet year-round. So now, is it possible for
Yes.
these certifications to happen during the same period when we
Yeah.
are meeting?
Yes.
So-
Because now it's happening when we're not
Right.
in
But you're given
session.
extra time for that.
We are given extra
Yes,
time?
Not
in
much.
case a certification
30
happens in
days.
like June or July,
Yes.
right, when the community board is on its summer break, then like special extra time is built into the ULURP process. Like there's a special provision for summer so that during periods where the community board might be on vacation or something like that, they're still given the time that they need to meet and make a recommendation.
It's an
Not
extra
much.
30 days, it's an extra 30
Yeah.
days.
We end up having to meet over the summer
Yes.
Okay.
You
and
want
have
that.
extra meetings when that happens, and it tends to happen around holidays, around summer.
Mhm.
The most inconvenient times is when these things get certified.
Is this,
Holidays.
okay, I don't need to sound.
Just when
I'm not gonna ask
there's
questions.
this pre-certification or the certification, you say the community board gets notified, but what about the general public? Are they notified? Is there any way to know?
Well,
We
they-
have to notify them.
Right, I think
Right.
you as the community board notify the general.
Right,
We don't like
that's
put
how it
flyers up on the street, but
But
we
somebody has to-
we
But there's no
Scrolling
like,
down.
there's no like notice, there's no like notice that goes up on any type of,
Well, yes, it goes up on the
Zap.
website.
On the website, but so there's
what
no,
website?
the community board.
The application would be on Zap.
On Zap.
On Zap.
So you would have to
find
be
it
trolling
there,
Zap
they
and
have to post it on
monitoring
Zap.
what's happening.
But they also have to submit it to the community board, and it's the community board's job to let us know.
So say if your community board didn't have like, for a long time, we didn't have,
A committee.
well, we didn't have a committee,
Meeting.
but we also didn't have, we didn't have like Dante, a
A
community.
committee, a district manager.
Yeah, for like a number of years, so,
But it's supposed to
No,
go to
we
the
had-
land use
we
committee
had-
anyway, regardless
yeah.
of who's.
Yeah, it's
We've
supposed to go
always
to the
had
land
that.
use, it's supposed to go to the land use committee chair, not just the district
Right,
manager.
right.
Yeah.
It goes to the chair and it also goes to the board.
So
but we
aside-
don't know unless they tell us like as a public person.
Yes.
Yeah, but this land use
Or
committee
you-
has.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about not
No,
just
we've
for
been-
us, but
we've been
for, I'm thinking about like people in my neighborhood that aren't on board, you know, that, just general public.
And they're supposed to also describe to you in detail what the proposed rezoning certification is being done, but they kind of ignore that portion of the law. So the only thing that they now give you is just that, oh, we're gonna certify it.
So, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, that's informative.
Alright. community boards, so 60 days.
Mhm.
After that, we move on to the borough president, who has 30 days to review an application, hold a public hearing, issue a recommendation. Again, borough president's recommendation is advisory, not binding.
Can you define, because it mentions the borough board, just so that they know what may go through the borough president, what rezonings may apply to a borough board?
Yes.
So yeah, borough board is any rezoning or like land use action that touches 2 or more community boards in the same borough. So that automatically triggers the borough board review.
Well, if
And
there's
can you
more
tell
than
them what the
one,
borough board is, because I know a lot of
Borough
people
board
don't know about that.
is it's not, they don't necessarily frequently meet, it's more like an ad hoc board that consists of representatives from each of the community boards in Brooklyn or in like another borough, as well as the council members. And so the idea is that if you have like a citywide application or like an application affecting multiple boards, kind of the spirit is that the whole borough should weigh in on that.
And the borough boards do meet consistently.
and borough board, Fred is on that, Fred Bedford.
Yeah, all the
Chair-
chairs,
all the chairs of every,
or members of
that
the
right?
board,
Mhm.
as well as every city council person. But you know, this whole review has changed, so you were giving us,
is our district manager on that, or he just goes?